everyone coming in. For those of you who are able to keep your cameras on, we'd love to see you. If you can't have your cameras on, we completely understand. Welcome, everyone. My name is Andy Engel, and I lead virtual Hello! I lead virtual public programs here at Reimagine. And I want to welcome you to the second session of our series, The Whole World in Our Hands, Connecting to Collective Grief. First, a bit about Reimagine. Reimagine is a nonprofit organization catalyzing a uniquely powerful community. People of different backgrounds, different ages, different races, different sexual orientations, gender identities, people of faith, people of no faith, all coming together in an effort to heal ourselves, our communities, and the world. We support each other in facing adversity, loss, and the facing mortality in an effort to transform life's biggest challenges into action and growth. Reimagine resources, support groups, events like this one today are free, sliding scale, and accessible to the public. This is made possible by the support and generosity of participants like you. So for those who already made a tax-deductible donation when you registered for today's program, thank you so much. Your gift will immediately support Reimagine's mission to help people of all walks of life transform the hard stuff into purpose and meaning. Our theme this month is collective grief, the wide range of responses to shared tragedies. Last week, we learned together, we heard and witnessed stories of collective grief. One takeaway for me was that we should acknowledge that there are no hierarchies when it comes to collective grief, whether that's a mass shooting, a terrorist attack, war, or even the results of an election. Liz Miller at September 11th Families for Peaceful Tomorrows, she stressed that although her father, a respected firefighter and first responder, was killed at the Twin Towers, her grief isn't elevated compared to the grief of others. Also, all of our speakers concurred that collective grief can often bring unexpected blessings and gifts. The grief certainly doesn't go away, but neither does the joy in our lives. I have been buzzing with excitement about today's 90-minute workshop with Michelle Cassandra Johnson. We are in good hands with her. She is an author, an activist, and healer. A bit more about her in a moment. I do want to let you all know that there is the third session of this series taking place next Tuesday. So please join us for that. You can register using a link that my colleague Nicole Tan will paste in the chat. We've got spiritual leaders Lama Rod Owens and Rabbi Tirza Firestone. They will guide us towards action and growth. And you'll have the opportunity at this gathering next Tuesday to connect with others in small breakout rooms. I also want to give a shout out to our community of Reimagine collaborators. They are hosting events on this platform along with the ones that we produce. You can host events too if you've got some ideas. There's a link for that also that we can paste. We've been encouraging Reimagine collaborators to present programs related to our monthly themes. So please check out this additional event related to collective grief. We've got Cynthia Phelps, who is based in Asheville, North Carolina, leading a weekly gathering through the end of the year, working with difficult emotions. She's helping folks process grief associated with the hurricanes and other global catastrophes. And just a few words about Zoom. You've got the CC button at the bottom of the screen for captions. And if you open the window in the chat, you can save the transcript for that. So take a look. Feel free to send me or Nicole a private message in the chat if you're having any problems during this session. We can try to help you out. Okay, now I'm going to hand this over to our special guest, Michelle Cassandra Johnson. Please, please, please take a look at her book, Finding Refuge. She has other books as well. But as soon as I had the opportunity to take a look at this book, I knew Michelle was the right fit for us. Michelle, thank you so much for agreeing to lead this workshop. I'm going to hand this over to you now.
Thank you, Andy and Reimagine, and all of you who are here, who decided to carve out this time and space to be in community in this way. It's an honor to be here, and I see some familiar faces and names, and am always excited to expand my circle and meet new friends on the path and along the way. So I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm thrilled to be guiding one of my favorite practices, which is called Telling the Bees, which I'll share more about in just a little bit. I want to give you a sense of the flow, and I'm glad you put that in chat. Andy mentioned Finding Refuge, and there's another book, We Heal Together, that has a chapter about the honeybees. And if you're interested in those, you can get a discount through Shambhala Publications. So that information is in the chat. And while I'm talking about books, my next book is coming out in May, co-written with my best friend, and it is all about the honeybees. It is called The Wisdom of the Hive. So stay tuned for that. Sounds True is publishing that one, and I'm always thrilled to learn from the bees and be a student, and also share what I am learning and observe, and have been gifted by the bees. So lots of bee talk, and bee magic and bee wisdom. So we're going to take a moment to land. I don't know where you were coming from or what happened before your arrival here. We're going to take a moment to land, or a few minutes to arrive. After that, I'll share a little bit more about who I am, and specifically the bees and my relationship with them and how they came to me. And some of you are familiar with the story, although it evolves, right, over time, and as my relationship with the bees deepens. And then I'll share some about the ritual of telling the bees, and we're going to move through the practice. And we'll see where we are then. It is likely that we will continue to work with the bees through an exploration of polarities, because they work with polarities a lot, which very much relates to grief and what happens or what is connected to grief. Things like levity and love and joy, these poles of experience as we think about grief and sorrow. So we'll probably explore that. And then if we have time, we're going to touch into sweetness just a little, because that feels like an important thing to bring in as we think about the honeybees, and there'll be some time for questions. So that is the flow, but the bees will do what they want, and we will see where they want to guide us. I fully trust them. So let's take some time to land here. So I invite you to find a way to be in your body. You were invited to be on camera if you could. If you want to stay on camera for this, awesome. If you feel like, nope, want to be off camera for this opening, centering meditation, that's fine. You can come back on. Always love to see faces and be in the energy of who's here and their presence and essence. So you decide. And your eyes can be open or closed for this, or soft gaze on the ground in front, or maybe you want to focus on something in your space that is grounding. I have a beeswax candle on my desk. I'm just looking at it, the color of it, and the flame. So find a soft gaze or a grounding focal point. And your hands can rest wherever feels most comfortable. Perhaps there's a part of your body that wants to receive some care and attention through touch. Perhaps your hands might find your knees, or maybe your hands will move to your heart. Or maybe you want to wiggle your fingers and roll the shoulders back and down, right? Perhaps the body is not yet ready for stillness. And I invite you to take a few deep breaths here as we come into this space, this sacred space, to work with the energy of the holy and humble honeybee. And if it would feel supportive to you to breathe in and open your mouth and exhale with an audible exhale, releasing the breath, or a sigh or a sound, you can breathe in and allow the breath to move out, releasing it from your body. And with every exhale, I invite you to allow yourself to settle if possible and begin to land wherever you might be. One way to do this is to feel your connection to the earth, what is underneath you, the ground. And if it would feel supportive to draw in some earthly energy into the body to help your nervous system settle, you can draw this energy in from your connection to the earth. And because we are in deep relationship with the earth, and perhaps you might deepen your breath a bit more. And as you breathe here, I invite you, even though you may not be able to hear the breath in the space, those who are in this hive and community with us, I invite you to become aware of the fact that we are breathing collectively, inhaling and exhaling, all part of a time-space continuum, a timeline, a lineage, a connection. Even as we are holding different things in our heart, perhaps grieving different things and grieving some of the same things at this time. So we can make space for our different experiences while also honoring our connection through breath and our collective inhales and exhales. And this is really a mirror to the energy of a honeybee hive, as honeybees do not think of themselves as individuals, but rather an extension of the hive, a superorganism, a collective, working in service of the hive and the highest good. And I invite you to take a few more deep inhales and exhales just as you are, as we breathe together in this 5, as we remember we belong to one another and are interconnected through breath and time and space and vibration, and the holy hum, the honeybee, shares with us. And if there is some intention you want to set for this time we have, I invite you to set an intention now. And if there is a blessing or wish you would like to uplift for the collective and our collective healing as we tend our hearts and as we grieve together, I invite you in your mind's eye and from your heart to uplift your blessing, wish, prayer, hope, desire. And to take 3 deep breaths. And then to gently bring yourself back into your space and our space, reorienting, perhaps reconnecting, looking at the flame of the beeswax candle once again, right? Reorienting to time and space, staying in connection with our hive as well, feeling my feet on the ground. And welcome back into the space. And I want to share a little bit about the honeybee and my connection with the honeybees and how they came to me, which is connected to grief and what we will practice tonight. So, and some of this is in Finding Refuge for those who are familiar with it, or some of you may have heard me share this. And I love sharing this story because it's the way the bees work. I was in 2019 and I had lived in Portland, Oregon, but I had moved back to North Carolina. I happened to be in Portland working when this happened. I awoke from what I think was a dream, although I don't have a memory of the dream. But I suspect the dream was about the honeybees, because when I awoke at 4 a.m, what I noticed was that I had ordered what one needs to tend bees. I'd ordered the boxes, the suit, the hive tool, the frames. And what really made me wake up is the dollar amount in on the invoice for what I had spent on my credit card when I was not actually conscious of what I was doing. I had never taken a beekeeping class. I had a relationship with bees because I had friends who were beekeepers, bee priestesses, in love with the bees, talked to me about them. And I was curious about the bees, but had not learned about them, right? In a formal way is what I'll say. And so I freaked out because I didn't even know how to hive them, or what to do with them. And I contacted 2 friends and said, I've just done this, and I need your help. I don't know what to do. And one of them lived in Winston-Salem, which is where I am, which I should name as the ancestral land of the Catawba, the Cherokee, the Tutelo, the Saponi, the Occaneechi, and many other tribes in North Carolina. So one of them lived locally at the time, and she talked me through how to hive the bees when they came. And the other friend who I called for support said, I think the bees came to you because your mom is sick. My mother was sick at the time, very sick. And she was sick in 2019 and 2020. Both times we thought she was transitioning. She's still here. I talked to her an hour ago today. She's doing all right. Clara is doing well. And I'm really grateful for that. But at the time she was so ill, and my friend Carla said, I think the bees came to you because they're going to help your mom transition. Because bees are psychopomps, which means that they work between realms. And in many mythologies, bees are said to be able to help souls ascend after one has transitioned and left the physical incarnation or body. And I didn't know that at the time. So when she said it to me, it really struck me that perhaps the bees are here to help my mom and to help me through this time, because it actually made no sense. The timing of, if I think about logic, it made no sense to add tending bees to my responsibilities, given that I was caretaking my mom in so many ways. And I think in the larger plan, it made a lot of sense. Because I think bees have a higher intelligence and are doing work on our behalf in very tangible ways, right? The food that we eat and the ways they support the ecosystem. And then in more spiritual or transcendent ways, they're working in these different realms. This is what I believe about them, which is one of the reasons why I love being in relationship with them and having a direct relationship with them. So that's how they came to me. And since then, I have had them here. I have 3 hives right now. And I'm getting ready to winterize their hives, hoping that they make it through winter. 2 of them did last year, and there's a newer hive that's here. And their names are Demeter, Persephone, and Artemis, which is a whole other conversation we can have about those energies, and particularly Demeter and Persephone this time of year, and the darkness and grief, right, and how it relates to darkness and wading through darkness, and also what can germinate in the dark as we turn toward our grief. So that's the shortest version of the story of how the bees came to me. And as I named earlier, I'm a student of them, and they teach me so many things about how to be in community, about how to work in the dark, about how to grieve, about how to celebrate, about how to dance. These are all things that they do, about sweetness and how to create that, about creating sweetness in the dark, which is something we'll talk about and play with a bit, about polarities, poles of experience, and about collective care and what it means to be in relationship with one another in the more than human world. So that is a little bit about the bees, and I'm going to tell you about telling the bees, and then we're going to move through the practice of telling the bees. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Just got very, very windy here, like wildly windy. Something is brewing. So this is a quote that I want to share, and then I'll go into the some images of people with their bees, and I'll show you these 2 short videos of my bees. This is not a slide heavy. This isn't a presentation. This is more when talking about bees. Sometimes it's helpful to have a visual aid and a connection to them. And for telling the bees, it will be more of a visualization to the hive. When someone dies, you are supposed to tell the bees and invite them to the funeral. Give them wine and cake. Hang mourning cloth over the hive. You should tell them other things as well, of a marriage, when you are planning to rob the hive, which is taking the honey, when you are troubled by your dreams. Tell and they will listen. Tell and they will spread the word with the wind. Perhaps that's what's happening now. Rima Staines is who said this, and it really encapsulates what telling the bees is. Telling the bees is an ancient practice. It actually shows up in different lineages and in different places across the globe. It began with a practice of telling the bees when someone transitioned or died. As this says, when someone dies, you're supposed to tell the bees. And the ritual would include the person sharing with the bees, going out to the hives, knocking once on the hive to let the bees know they were there, although the bees typically do know we're around them well before we actually are close to them. And sometimes people would cover the hives with black crepe paper or red crepe paper or cloth. Sometimes people would turn the hive to face the north, which in some traditions, the north is the cardinal direction associated with ancestors, the gateway, the portal, a return to the earth. And people would then tell the bees, right? This is what happened. And the idea was so that the bees could mourn with the person, the family, and be in communion with them in that particular way. The second part of this is you should tell them other things as well. Over time, the practice of telling the bees expanded to include celebrations and information, like when you're going to harvest honey, if you do that, to tell them that that's going to happen. I tell my bees when I'm going to go into the hive, right? Days before, I will tell them I'm going to come into the hive in a couple of days, right? Or weather is coming, right? A change in the weather is coming, although they're attuned to that. Or if I'm celebrating something big or I'm just feeling gratitude, right? I'll share that with them. Certainly shared dreams with them too. When I felt troubled by my dreams and when I have dreams that I want to let them know about. And this says tell and they will listen. And I do believe this. They are attuned to us and actually all things. And I think they're in this constant awareness of what is happening and in a deep practice of listening and communicating. And this idea that they will spread the word, right? They will share. If you think about honeybees, they can, physically, right, fly and work with the wind. But also the sound, and we'll hear it actually in just a little bit, the sound of a hive, the hum of the hive, right? That this is a way that they communicate. They dance and communicate as well. So this is the tradition of telling the bees. And the way we're going to work with it is related to grief and what we're grieving and what we want to partner with them in mourning at this time. I'm just going to share some images of this is a person with skeps, which are baskets. This is what hives used to look like, actually, when people kept bees, right, versus bees being in the wild. And this person, there's a cloth, black cloth there, and the person is talking to the bees. This is a person sitting in front of a skep as well. This is the modern day, right, image with bees all around and a hive with hive boxes and a field of flowers. Of course, they're all suited up and the other ones, they weren't. They have different hives there too. someone with their hive, communing with the hive, getting the energy. And this is a skep up here. You can see it's sort of whimsical, the different hives in the apiary. They're actually catching a hive. There's a hive in that tree that they're working in. And these are my bees. I have chickens too. They were in the background. This is on a warm day when they're very busy. And there's one with pollen right there going in, another one with pollen going in, yellow pollen in their pockets. You can hear their vibration and sound. That's Artemis. And those are the chickens, obviously running around in the background. And the bees are just buzzing about, looking at the messages. You are supposed to hear sound, but maybe you will hear sound in a moment, because I have another video that I'll share that I tested out earlier. It's just the setting on Zoom for this particular thing. So you can watch this. You won't hear them, but I do have a video where you're going to hear sound when we practice telling the bees. And what you would hear is this hum and vibration, which again, you'll hear in a moment. These are the same two hives that are in the back. And it's on a warm day, so very busy coming in and out. And these are fanning. What you saw at the end is they were fanning because it's hot. And sometimes bees fan to cool off the hive, and sometimes bees fan to call the foragers back home to the hive. So I just wanted to introduce you to those two hives. What we're going to do now, I'm going to stop sharing this, is I'm going to invite you to think about and take a moment to consider what you're mourning right now and what you wish to share with the bees. And so just take a moment to feel into your heart, your experience, what you're grieving, maybe even what brought you here. And touch into that to consider what you want to share. And you have the opportunity to share something you're mourning with the bees. You also have the opportunity to share something that you're celebrating, or if there is sorrow and joy, for example, or grief can feel heavy, and levity or lightness can be the pole of experience that is in relationship to grief and heaviness. But take a moment to touch into that. What are you grieving? What are you mourning? What do you wish to tell the bees? I'll give you a minute to do this, and then I'm going to guide you through telling the bees, which will be a visualization where you actually visualize going to a hive. And I will play a video where you will be able to hear the bees in the background. So what do you wish to tell the bees? What are you mourning? And take another minute. And what I didn't say about telling the bees is in folklore, the idea was you shared with the bees and if you didn't, that something could happen, right? And so that's folklore. I'm not saying that's true. I am going to say there's a real invitation to share with them because of their expansive nature and spirits and what they can hold with us. That's what I want to say about that. Yeah, I see your share about your brother and loss, and that's what you want to ask them. How does he feel in the other world? Which is a great question to ask. And tonight when we visualize with them, you can ask them whatever you would like. You can tell them what you would like to share with them. Just what I'm going to guide us to do. So you might still be reflecting. You're more than welcome, as someone has done, to put something in chat. I'm going to guide you through the practice, and then there'll be time for chat and sharing as well, before we work with sweetness and polarities and the other things that exist alongside mourning and grief. And some other anxiety and anger and depression about Trump and about the election. Norma just put that in chat. And your life, it sounds like to me. So a lot going on. And then thank you, Elaine, for sharing. I'm sorry for your loss, very recent loss. And something that can happen in this, thank you, Nisha, loss of hope for the future, for future generations, is there may be resonance for you in what people are sharing, or maybe your experience is actually quite different than what people are sharing. There's something though about being able to share and also be witnessed in it, which is connected to telling the bees as well, right? What we want to tell them and how we want to share. See other people losing rights. It's Trans Remembrance Day. Thank you, Theo. And Trans Awareness Week. So Theo named trans people murdered and killed in the last year and whose lives are threatened by the Trump regime, losing rights, mourning my youth, losing the loss of a husband, missing honesty, love, and humor. Livia, loss of Mary. I may have said their name wrong 5 years ago. You thought was your soulmate. Yeah, help us see the human goodness that remains. Yes, shifting gears, direction of long-term lover, right? Grief, and this came up last week for anyone who was there or watched the recording. And Andy said this at the beginning when Andy named the hierarchy of that there isn't a hierarchy, right? I actually assume we're all grieving something, and there may be resonance between us, right? In what we're grieving collectively. So there are these losses people have experienced individually, which is being named, and losses that we're responding to in the larger collective, and both are alive. And in fact, when things happen in the collective, often they compound losses we may be working with in our individual lives. Thank you. Loss due to the hurricane, loss of parents, politics tearing families apart, mourning the loss of Palestinian life, mourning what we will lose. So there's anticipatory grief in this space as well. Missing simple and kind things that were present when you were younger. Yeah. Loss of Tia Lydia. Thanks, Brenda. Wanting to reconnect with the beekeepers they've brought into relationship with me. Loss of purpose. There's a lot, right? Loss of people, loss of anticipatory loss around the future, loss of experience, loss of relationship. Loss of spiritual teachers. So much. So you can feel free to continue to be sharing and witnessing in this way. I'm going to invite us to share some of this with the bees. And the way I'm going to guide this is I will guide you to breathe. I will guide you to imagine you are near, or if you choose to be very close to a hive that you visualize in your mind, I will help build that for you. If you have hives, you can visualize being with them. Or if you're in relationship with hives, right, you know, a beekeeper and you visit. And we're going to tune into the sound, which you will hear this time. And we're going to, and what's happening in the hive and what we notice in the hive, just as we observe it. And then begin to share what you want them to hold with you. And again, you can ask them questions. What I will say is that typically the energy of a honeybee does not answer in a linear way, but they may show you symbols or signs or movements or sounds, and they may answer your question very directly, but they're not linear in that particular way. It's a different realm. So I'd invite you to be open to what they have to share with you. And then I'll bring you back and there'll be an opportunity for more sharing. So you can find a way to be once again in your body. You can be on camera or off camera. And I'm just going to play the sound at first, and then later I'll show you the video to show you some of what they're actually doing in the hive. And I see some things coming in. So find a way to be, and I'm going to invite you to take a few deep inhales and exhales, returning to the breath and the ground initially. And take a few deep breaths. If you'd like a cleansing breath, you can breathe in and open your mouth and breathe out. And then just take a moment to feel into the body. There's been sharing and witnessing. So noticing what's present for you and your body, your nervous system now. And I'd invite you to become aware that we're moving to this practice, as I said, so the bees can hold something with us, can work with their grief. They're alchemists. They transmute energy. There's a real possibility they can help certainly receive what you've shared about what you're grieving, and to also work with it in a way that maybe you are not able to work with. You should start to hear some buzzing. This is buzzing from inside a hive in here. If the buzzing is like alarming, you can turn it down a little. I can't tell how loud it is. And just know this hive is, they're like working. It's a happy hive. This is not an agitated sound or an agitated hive. And I'll show you later what they're doing, but they're fanning wings, they're checking on larvae, they're doing the waggle dance, they're buzzing about. And so now that you have the hum, I want you to imagine you are either, a healthy distance, right? Or close to a hive. And this hive can be out in the wild, in a tree, or it might be a hive that lives in a hive box or a skep or some other vessel where bees live. So I want you to imagine you're with this hive. You can hear the vibration and the sound, to breathe and notice what's coming up for you. And there's a low hum and a high hum, and the bees are very busy. And as you are near this hive in your mind's eye, and as you're connecting with it and the hum, there are bees flying in and out, foragers bringing pollen and tree resin for propolis and nectar and water into the hive. And the way the bees enter and exit the hive is called the inhale and exhale of the hive. And there are bees inside, as I said, receiving the pollen and the nectar. There are bees building honeycomb. There are bees tending larvae. There are bees tending the queen. There are bees doing the waggle dance to show where a good location is for pollen, nectar, water, tree resin. There are bees fanning inside and outside to cool the hive. And some fan to turn the nectar into honey, to take the water out of the nectar. And I want you here to begin to share with the bees, to begin to ask the questions you might have, or to begin to tell them what you're mourning right now, right? What you named in the chat earlier, or what was coming to you. What do you want to tell the bees? And begin to tell the bees as they hum and know they are receiving what you're sharing, your questions, what's present in your heart, the names of those you're mourning, your concerns, anxieties, worries about the future. We're not burdening the bees. We're sharing in communion with them. So share what you would like with the bees. And just notice how they respond to you as they receive what you're mourning, what you're sharing. You might even notice how they are humming, right, in connection and response. They might show you something, an open cell of honeycomb, larvae being tended by nurse bees, future generations. They might fan their wings. They might turn toward you in connection, noticing how they respond. Taking a few more breaths here, being with them, breathing with them, seeing what they have to share with you and how they receive what you're holding on in your heart and what you're mourning right now. And if you would like to hum along with them, you can. Breathing in and with the mouth closed, you can buzz if you would like. Just tuning into their vibration, only if you would like. Taking a few more breaths here. And when you feel ready, you can thank the hive. You are witnessing them, near them, and mindfully begin to bring yourself back as they continue to do their work. Thanking them for receiving what you wanted to share with them. Beginning to bring yourself back. Noticing how you feel as you return. You might still be buzzing. And noticing what came up for you as you both reflected on what you're mourning, as we shared some of that in the chat, and as you shared with the bees. And as you're coming back, if there's anything you want to record, of course you can do that, writing it down, noticing it's present. And I'd love to either make space for a few people to share and chat about what came through in the practice, or, 2 or 3 people to speak into the space to share about what came through in the practice. It could be something the bees shared with you, showed you, or how it felt to connect with them in this way, particularly if this is a new practice. And if you want to share verbally, there's time for a few people to do that. I invite you to raise your hand so I can see you, and then I'll invite you to just briefly share what emerged, or you can put it in chat. Just want to make space if there's anyone who wants to share. How it felt, or anything that may have come up for you. Oh, I see the humming of bees matched and then absorbed my ruminating mind. And when it dissipated, I felt my clarity and calm. The feeling of hope emerged. Anyone else want to share? I noticed how magical the process of turning pollen into honey seems, like alchemy. It is. I asked them how I can transform my grief, and they hummed, love. Yeah, I don't know much about bees, but I have one bee memory coming up about how they go out looking for a home. I need their energy in my new quest. I feel a supportive community around me that wants the best for me in housing and all things. Yes, feeling that hive surrounding me in this most confusing time. Anyone else? I yeah. I see Eleanor. I see your hand. You probably have to. You're probably trying to unmute. I might be able to help with that. I just did something that might help. Great.
Michelle, thank you so much. That was this presentation is so beautiful, and also that was very calming. So I really appreciate it first. And at times I feel concerned that what I have to offer isn't enough, not good enough, whatever all that stuff is. And that's a block for me. And what I heard from the bees is that that's a human ego issue, and that the bees, they don't have ego. They're in service. They just do what needs to be done in service for the collective. And I can be like the bees and just get it done. So it's very helpful.
Thanks, Eleanor, for sharing that. And yes, yes, indeed. They're good teachers in that way of reminding us of what's real. And, they're such devoted workers to the hive and the higher good, right? And sustaining the hive. And often I think about these and how, particularly when they're building honeycomb or foraging for resources, or even the nurse bees tending the larva. I think about how they're doing jobs that they may not, sort of the fruits of our labor, we may not see it. So in fact, they're building honeycomb, and once that honeycomb houses pollen or houses larvae, right, or nectar, those bees who built that honeycomb may no longer be alive. They may have transitioned, and particularly foragers, they're foraging resources that they may not actually, in the physical form, benefit from. They're doing to sustain the hive and the future of the hive, which very much connects, I think, to what I heard in what you shared, and the memory of like why we do what we do,
Absolutely.
and for what.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I see Wendy put very calming and soothing, the image of the hive, the way we collect together, like-minded people for support and take turns doing the work and resting. I felt humming, not alone. Yeah. I imagined a white beehive in the middle of the redwood forest. Beautiful. Alicia, these towering trees on either side of the beehive sitting on a wooden table. There was one single bee that caught my eye, flying high, high, high over the hive into the blue sky. My brother, yeah, alone maybe. My tears fell long, deep, way down into my chest, uninterrupted, tears as nectar. Asked the bees to take my tears and use them as nectar. Yes, they're a medicine. Thank you, Alicia, for sharing that. There's a question about a bee's lifespan. It depends on where you are. And typically it's 6 weeks, but in the winter, bees live longer, honeybees. So the winter bees are out now in the hive, and they have to live longer so that they can get the hive through winter. And it can be a little hardier. Because they have to survive longer to help the hive make it through the season of winter. And I've been reflecting on this with grief and life and all the things you all named in the chat about what you're grieving and what it means to weather winter, and a season of winter, which to me, this time on the planet feels like this long winter, where there's perhaps, I live in North Carolina. It's not like it's harsh weather in the winter, but it's colder, right? It's darker. And I'm thinking about that energy and how we weather that and move through it. And so I've just been thinking a lot about what does it mean to embody the spirit of a winter bee, as we journey through this time and all the things you named. And they do have short lifespans. Mourning, the lost opportunity. Oh, I see. That's earlier. I see. Yes. Oh, Norma, I see what you put in the chat. Genocide in Gaza. Yeah. Yeah. So much. Is there anyone else who wants to share? I'm going to share a little bit more with you. Great question. What do they do in the winter? I will answer you. And then we'll talk about the polarity of darkness and light and work with it a little bit and sweetness. It depends on where you are. And what I mean is how cold it gets. The conditions in place, which, I'm grieving climate chaos. And I'm grieving many other things. That's one thing. And the way that I, through my actions and others, are asking the more than human world to adapt to untenable conditions and circumstances. And I love that, Eleanor. And what bees do here, where I am, is I have to prepare them for winter, which means making sure they have enough food, honey, and or adding extra food if they need it. And I have to add some insulation and something that helps with condensation, because bees in the winter stay warm by fanning their wings. And there are also bees called heater bees, which can heat up things a little bit faster in the hive. And in the winter, bees cluster. So they form a cluster in the hive to stay warm, and they are similar to penguins. They're an indicator species, which penguins are as well. The penguins, to stay warm, rotate who's in the middle and who's on the edges. Bees do the same thing. So they rotate who's the warmest in the center and who's outside fanning, who's in the warmest and who's outside fanning. And they stay in this cluster unless it's warm enough to break cluster, which takes energy, and to go out on cleansing flights and then to come back in. So that's part of what they do. The other thing, which is a good lead into darkness and light, is that, the bees are in the dark in the winter. They're in the darkness a lot of the time, actually, in their vessel that is their hive. And be that a box, the base of a tree trunk, wherever they might live, they do a lot of their work in the dark, which I'll show you actually in a moment. And I often think about what it means to do work in the dark, in the way I was just talking about this winter season and darkness. And when we're moving through a season of grief, what does it mean to exist in that? And how do we remember the light, which is the pole of experience? It is the energy that is deeply intertwined with darkness. It is not in opposition to darkness, right? Just like love is not in opposition to grief, it's in deep relationship with it. So that's something we'll explore. So many questions about the bees. I love it. The queen can live up to 7 years, but often the queen, it depends on your hives, but a lot of my hives make a new queen each year in preparation to swarm, which is an auspicious experience. And when they swarm, they split one hive into two. The older queen, elder queen, goes with the swarm. The new queen stays with the remaining bees. So the queen lives longer. And her main job is to lay eggs in the hive to create future generations. And sometimes, this happened to me once, they will let two queens live in a hive. And one winter, I found two queens in the same hive, which, they say can't happen, but it happened. So that's the answer about that. Yeah, there's so much about grief and the bees. I see that in the chat. What I want to invite us to work with for just a few minutes is, well, actually, I want to show you what you were listening to, because you might be interested in it. So I can show you what they're doing, if there was curiosity about that. And then we'll work with so you should be able to see a bunch of bees, okay, on a screen, and hear them. It's a little quieter. This is inside a hive. It's not my hive. It's a video, Frederick Gunn's video. It's online. And they are doing a lot of things. See how busy they are? These bees with their butts in the hive, I believe there's larvae in these cells, and they're tending those, the nurse bees, are tending the larvae. You're going to see somebody come through and do a waggle dance because they were doing it earlier. These are mostly female bees. Most of the bees you see are female in general. Male bees are drones, and they do some things, but they do some work, but their roles are different, I will say, than the rest of the workers. You can see some bees fanning. They're just scurrying about, but they're in relationship with one another. They're humming along. And this is drone brood. So it's male brood. Males will emerge from those cells. I'm just waiting for someone to come through with they're so fast, but they know everything that's going on in the hive. These two are communicating antenna to antennae. They may be sharing some resources. It looks like their antenna is not their proboscis, which is how they eat honey. If I see a male bee, I'll point them out, but I don't see one right now. Well, there might be one right here. Where my cursor is, I believe that's a male. They have rounder bottoms. It is a drone. Bigger eyes. So this is what you were watching, what you were listening to earlier. This bee's fanning their wings. They're fanning their wings. And they're in constant communication. So this is what you were viewing. I'll be happy to share this link in the chat and to share it with Andy and Reimagine to send out to you all. Yeah, that's definitely a male bee over here. This is a male. And these are all females around. But you can see he's bigger. Okay. So I'll stop sharing this, but I'll put the link in the chat if you want more. The magic and wisdom and energy. Let me get that for you. Still playing on my. Here we go. Okay. I'll put it in chat. There you go. I have another link that has a buzz that's a little quieter. So it's talking about light and darkness and polarities of experience, and the bees work with polarities a lot. And I just want us to sense into this because we humans work with polarities as well. They exist in our bodies. The breath, inhaling and exhaling, is a polarity. They exist around us as far as time and space and experience. And in my experience of grief, sometimes it has been difficult to remember, or when I've moved through times that feel challenging, or I'm unsure of what to do, or I'm overcome with grief, I can forget light or levity or joy, or even that grief is, as many people said, an expression of love. And so I just want to invite you to, I'm going to invite you to breathe, and I'm going to name some polarities so we can understand that polarities are not in opposition, they're in relationship. And the invitation with this is for you to really consider what exists alongside grief and loss, right? What else? What is the pole of experience that you're moving through as you grieve? Your eyes can be open. We're only going to do this for a couple of minutes, if that, just to tap into this energy. And then I'm going to say something about sweetness, and then we'll have some time for questions. So I invite you to take a deep breath in, and as you breathe in, to draw the energy up through your feet to the crown of your head and beyond. And then as you exhale, to feel the energy move down the body and the breath empty from your body. And so with your inhales, you're drawing the energy up. With your exhales, you're allowing the energy to move back down. You're emptying the breath. And this is a polarity. An inhale, inspiration and new breath. An exhale, we empty the breath and we return our energy to the earth. The inhale, there's an experience of ascension. We exhale, the descent of the energy and a return to the earth. And you can feel how the inhale and exhale are working together, right? So when we inhale, and then what comes after, a pause, and then an exhale, and then another inhale. Right? This is one polarity that's embodied, right? This cycle of breath. The inhale begets the exhale, exhale begets the inhale. That this is the flow. You can also relate to polarities as you think about day and night, or as you think about sunrise and sunset, as you think about the darkness and light, as you think about sound and silence, as you think about things that feel hard, surfaces, right? Or energy, and things that feel soft. As you think about birth and death, grief and love, sorrow and joy, heaviness and levity. So just want to, there's a lot more I would say about this normally because I love working with polarities. And in one of my books, We Heal Together, there is a practice, the polarity dance, which is, it's something the bees do to orient to their hive. And it is also a way we can work with the body to weave with polarities and to work with night and day, the energy, dark and light, right here and there. Just feeling how alive these things are. And for you all, what I want to invite you to work with is, or to contemplate, or let work with you, right? However you think of this, or practice. What else? What's the pole of the experience to grief for you? Is it love? Is it joy? Is it lightness? It's not to negate your grief or the heaviness that we can feel as we grieve and the overwhelm that we can feel and really are experiencing in so many ways. It's to invite us to notice what else is present. Right? What else? What's in relationship with this grief? Which I think sometimes can support us. So wanted to just invite that in for you to be with. And one way to be with this is maybe to journal about what is in relationship with my grief. Is it love? Do I call it by another name? How can I play with these energies? So both can be alive for me, right? Often I talk about feeling heartbroken and having an open heart, right? So broken and open, right? Or broken and whole is often what I talk about too. At the same time. So how can we invite our grief process into this? I will. There is, what I'll do is I see the question about the link to that dance. I can send you a video of the dance. I also can send you some instructions about how to do it. So I'll send that as a follow-up with the link to the video that I put in chat earlier. I'll share that. The bees work with the light and dark in that they work in the dark most of the time, but they need an infusion of light, which is the sun. So often when bees are born, they go out of the hive and they can't fly very well initially to get an infusion of the sun. They live in the hive then until they become foragers, which is the final stage of their life cycle. When they prepare to become foragers, they go out of the hive and they do what is called an orientation dance. And it is where a group of bees emerges. They fly in a lemniscate, which is a figure 8. And then they land on the hive. And then they hop off the hive and they make a bigger lemniscate, figure 8, and they land on the hive. And this goes on for a while until bees are making huge figure 8s in the sky above the hive. And this is actually how they know where their hive is, so that when they go to get pollen, they know where to come back. And the way they know is through this dance that they've done to orient. They're dancing with the hive. So that's another way that they work with the light. I see what you told the bees, Misha, and that they reminded you that we are all one, and it's our job to offer love to everyone, even if they don't respect their humanity. Okay. I think the final thing before I may not have time for more questions, there have been many. I just want to say something about sweetness, which is often I think about how bees work in a world where the conditions are shifting and how attuned they are to everything, and how they must be mourning as well, even if it's not apparent all of the time. And I think about them creating sweetness amid all the things you named. And what it means to be able to create sweetness in the dark and to create sweetness in an enduring season of winter energetically is what I mean, although that can happen to them physically. And so I'm present to what it means to be an alchemist and to work with nectar and to turn it into honey and sweetness, which of course is what feeds the hive, even if the context is really challenging and the conditions keep changing, right? And it may be difficult to feel the ground. The other thing I'll share about sweetness is I had a hive who, and this is in Finding Refuge, I had a hive who, there's a whole story about it, but they didn't make it through winter. This was the first season, I had bees, and they didn't make it through winter, and I'm not sure why, actually. And my bees often tell me that something's wrong through dreams. So I will have a dream. It has happened 3 times now, and I will know something's wrong and something needs attention. And I had a dream about this hive, and I went out and discovered they were not alive and anymore. And I was like, I mean, heartbroken, just overcome with grief at the sight of a lifeless hive who was as vibrant as the hive that you just saw on the screen. Because for me, it was a metaphor for the collective too. It always is, working with bees, like in all the ways you named about what you're grieving right now and how we are, what is happening to the collective and the division that people named in the chat, right? And what's happening in the world and these patterns that aren't new, that feel very intense. And this hive happened to leave an entire box of honey. And we had to do something with the honey. And I'm like crying, not knowing what to do. My husband was with me, and he was like, we're going to harvest this honey. And so it was I'll never forget the experience, because it was such a teacher for me about what it means to work with sweetness and invite it in, even when there's loss. And the gift of being left an entire box of honey to work with, that I couldn't just leave there, that we needed to work with it in some way. And so I just want to name that for you all to look for the sweetness, or whatever word you want to use to describe sweetness, as you are grieving and moving through your process of grief. And as we are grieving, where's that box of honey and that sweetness that was created in the dark, in collaboration with the light, because the resources to create it were cultivated because of the sun and the water, right? And what exists outside of the hive and the work of the bees. And I think sometimes, in my experience, I can forget to allow myself to experience sweetness, particularly when the world is like falling all the way apart. And that's actually not how I think about the world. But some days I'm like, where are we? What reality am I in? Is what I just feel like, what's surreal? What is going on? And so I want to invite us into the sweetness amid the chaos, right? And what we're grieving. And with that, Andy, I know you need to say some things. That went by way too fast for me. What an honor to share about the bees. I could share about them all day long, and there will be a book about it and other offerings if you want to learn more, and more practices. I typically lead a Telling the Bees practice once a month. And if you're interested in that and other work like this, I'm pretty easy to find. And I'll share my information with the other resources that I imagine Andy will share with you. So Andy, I'll turn it over to you.
Can we show some love to this beautiful beekeeper? Thank you, Michelle. Wow, thank you for creating this beautiful, warm hive. It made me reflect on, often at Reimagine events, we use human-generated sound to elicit emotion, to help people mourn, to help people grieve. And those examples often include musical instruments played by people, the human voice singing, meditation bells that people chime. But I've never, ever experienced a Reimagine event where we had non-humans creating this beautiful, safe space for us. So amazing, amazing. Thank you so much. And I want to thank everyone also for your contributions in the chat. I want to thank you all again for those who made a donation to Reimagine. When you registered, you can still support our efforts to provide free sliding scale, accessible, and engaging experiences like this one. Please, please, please complete a survey that Nicole has pasted in the chat. We want to hear from you. We want to hear what you liked. We want to hear your suggestions of what can be improved. We want to know what your interests are. So please fill that out. If you could start doing that now, great. And join us next Tuesday. We're going to have Lama Rod Owens and Rabbi Tirza Firestone in conversation with one another. These are two incredible spiritual leaders who have never been in conversation before. And it's the last session of this series, The Whole World in Our Hands. We have other events on our schedule, so please check those out. And that's it. Maybe, I often at our vigils, Reimagine's executive director likes people to unmute and say the word love. I'd love everyone to unmute now and buzz. How does that sound? Let's do it.
Let's do it.
2, 3.
Thank you very much. This was so helpful today.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Yeah. Take care, friends. I love this. I mean,
I'm going to
something.
listen to them tonight, the bees tonight.
Good. I'm so glad.
Be well.
Be well, friends.
Good, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.